Well, staying in Israel now, my colleague here at Sky News, Sharri Markson, is there reporting for us. Sharri, still October 6 in Israel at the moment, so official ceremonies won't begin there for a few more hours yet. But after all of your coverage, what's it like to be there at this time? Can you give us a sense of the feeling on the ground and who you've been talking to?
Good morning, Pete, and you're right, it's approaching midnight here in Jerusalem, in Israel, so the official commemorations will start tomorrow morning, but already the faces of the hostages are being shown, are being broadcast on buildings around Jerusalem. It's a very emotional time. Many people I've spoken to over the past few days say that they're still on October 7. They can't move past. It was such a deeply traumatic event for Israelis. So many people know someone who's been kidnapped or who was a former hostage or was in some way affected, was killed on October 7. This is an unprecedented terror attack that has shocked the nation, as we've been hearing, the largest loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust in a single day. Pete, just earlier today, and I'm going to be broadcasting this on my show tonight, I sat down with a former hostage, Aviva Siegel. She spent 51 days in Hamas captivity. She was dragged from her home in her pajamas along with her husband. She speaks of just how harrowing it was to be held in the underground tunnels, how she struggled for oxygen, they struggled to breathe, how they were beaten, tortured, starved and not given any water, yet had water bottles waved in front of them. She speaks in some quite really devastating graphic detail about the sexual violence that went on to the young women around her that were also being held hostage, and how they constantly worried about whether they were falling pregnant. It's quite an extraordinary interview, Pete, really powerful. That's going to be on my show at 8 o'clock tonight. We also spoke with the brother of the only Australian who was murdered on October 7. She's a grandmother, Galit Carbone. Her brother, Danny Masner, spoke about her final hours, how she battled to hold the door shut in her safe room. There was no lock, but the terrorists clearly had more strength than her. She just one woman. She had no chance. She never stood a chance. Let's have a look at what her brother, Danny Masner, had to say to us. These safety rooms, they were built to protect families from rocket fire. They weren't built to protect from terrorists on the ground. So many of them didn't even have locks.
That's right. None of them
didn't have a lock.
None of them had locks.
So she was holding the handle.
She was holding the handle, and it's either who's going to bend first. She's holding this way. They're trying to go that way.
She's a 66-year-old woman.
Yeah.
There's crazed Hamas terrorists on the other hand.
Maybe even doped crazed Hamas.
They would have broken in easily.
Easy. They took it.
She didn't stand a chance.
No, not one chance.
And Pete, when we walked around Kibbutz Be'eri, which was one of the hardest hit, homes just destroyed. If the terrorists couldn't get into the safe room, then they just lit the entire house on fire. I mean, we're talking about entire families killed, babies murdered, children left orphaned without their parents. It's truly a tragic day, and the world can't forget it. It often feels like the international community doesn't care about the hostages. I mean, how often do we hear our own government demand the release of the hostages, or any international governments put true pressure on Hamas and its backers and states like Qatar and Turkey that have been housing the Hamas leadership, squeezing Iran with sanctions? More can be done from the international community to bring the hostages home.
Yeah, it can. And Sharri, just a final one here before we go. I mean, after so much of your excellent coverage over the past year or so, what was it like to be there, and what struck you most about walking around Kibbutz Be'eri?
Look, it's been very emotional. We also went to the Nova Music Festival site. I've interviewed so many people like you have, Pete, and your coverage has been excellent on this. So many people over the past year, but being here in person, the emotion, the tears, it's palpable. I mean, standing in a safe room and seeing it riddled with hundreds of bullets, and you just think the people in there never stood a chance.
Yeah.
The army took in many cases, 12 hours to turn up. You know, this was a catastrophic intelligence and military failure as well. We still don't have the answers to that. Many people are waiting for an eventual inquiry, but they were families say they felt abandoned by the military, by their intelligence, by their own government. They were left to fend for themselves, and these were crazed Hamas terrorist animals who were celebrating the death of Jews. They were calling their parents back home in Gaza to boast about how many Jews they killed. We know that. We have the audio. So this is 1 year ago today.
Amazing. Sharri Markson coming to us live from Jerusalem. Appreciate that, Sharri. And just a reminder that Sharri's coverage will be on Sky News tonight at 8 o'clock as part of her show. And also coming up later on today, 2 o'clock this afternoon, we'll be replaying. It'll be a special replay of Josh Frydenberg's Sky News documentary, Never Again. That highlights the devastating impact of anti-Semitism in Australia.